The NBA has a rich and fascinating history when it comes to fights and brawls. There's the Malice in the Palace, the 2004 brawl between the Pistons and Pacers that spilled into the stands after a fan threw a drink at Ron Artest. After all the dust settled, 9 players were suspended, 5 players were charged with assault, and 5 fans were charged with various criminal offenses and banned from Pistons games for life. There's the 1984 brawl between the Celtics and the 76ers that featured Moses Malone and Charles Barkley holding down Larry Bird while Dr. J went to town on him. And there's the 2006 fracas between the Knicks and the Nuggets. You know, the one where Carmelo Anthony snuck a guy and then hilariously ran all the way to the other end of the court before anybody could retaliate. Of course, all of those fights have one thing in common. The combatants were all on opposing teams. But on occasion, we do see altercations between members of the same team. Now, usually these stories don't leave the locker room. However, every once in a while, a few will leak out. In 2017, Bulls forward Bobby Portis decked teammate Nikolai Mirotic at practice, breaking his face and giving him a concussion. In 2009, Gilbert Arenas brought 4 unloaded guns to the Verizon Center and sarcastically threatened teammate Jarvis Crittenden, who responded by pulling out a loaded gun, pointing it at Arenas, and telling him to make his day. In 1997, Golden State Warriors guard Latrell Sprewell just straight up choked PJ Carlesimo during practice after Carlesimo had the audacity to bark at Sprewell to make crisper passes. And Sprewell was eventually suspended for the rest of the season, which amounted to 68 games. Now everybody knows about those fights because it was impossible to keep them under wraps. One of the craziest fights hardly anyone knows about took place in 2008. And it involved none other than Hall of Famer Shaquille O'Neal, a.k.a. Shaq, a.k.a. Shaq Fu, a.k.a. Big Diesel, a.k.a. the Big Aristotle, a.k.a. the Big Shaqtus, b.k.a. the Man of Steel. According to the story, which we only heard long after the fact, are you ready for this? Shaq once choked out one of his teammates, unconscious, in the locker room prior to a game. Like, the guy was on the floor, lights out, 30 minutes before game time.
So I put him in a chokehold so Steve came out the bathroom and seen him on the floor.
The incident occurred during Shaq's brief stint with the Phoenix Suns and only leaked out in bits and pieces much later, which is pretty remarkable considering how insane it was. Now, some people might find it hard to believe that Shaq can be capable of such extreme violence. I mean, the guy has a pretty goofy public persona. You've seen the silly gifs, the cheesy commercials, the funny video games, the ridiculous movies, movie. And let's not forget the rapping. Oh, the rapping.
I got a hand that'll rock your cradle, cream you like cheese, spread you on my bagel.
However, the reality is, while Shaq has always been a fun-loving, chilled-out guy off the court, during his career, he was a pretty damn intense competitor, and he definitely didn't always get along with his teammates. The most obvious example of this is Shaq's long-standing feud with Kobe Bryant. The two NBA legends both joined the Los Angeles Lakers in 1996. Kobe as a cocky 18-year-old fresh out of high school, and Shaq as an established 24-year-old superstar entering the prime of his career. Unfortunately, the two didn't get along at all from day one. Shaq found Kobe to be arrogant and aloof, and he hazed the rookie pretty hard. And some say Shaq also resented all the attention Kobe got as the next great NBA superstar. Under the guidance of Phil Jackson, the Shaq and Kobe-led Lakers went on to win 3 straight championships from 2000 to 2002. And Shaq was named NBA Finals MVP each time. The Lakers' play on offense flowed through Shaq, and he thought it should continue to flow through him. Kobe, however, was growing tired of playing second fiddle, and he thought it was his turn to be the guy. During the Lakers' championship run, things were never good between Shaq and Kobe, and there was always tension and veiled criticism. Shaq constantly took digs at Kobe for not being a team player, and Kobe would turn around and criticize Shaq for having a poor work ethic. At one point during the 2001 and 2002 season, tensions between Shaq and Kobe were so high that Shaq demanded to be traded, but Phil Jackson managed to smooth things over. In 2004, however, things finally came to a head. That year, the Lakers lost the NBA Finals to the Detroit Pistons, and Shaq openly blamed Kobe for taking too many shots and not letting the offense run through him. When the Lakers opted not to renew Phil Jackson's contract after the season, most people assumed it was because Kobe was tired of Jackson's offensive schemes. At that point, it became pretty clear that either Shaq or Kobe had to go because the team wasn't big enough for both of those egos. and the Lakers opted to go with Kobe, who was 6 years younger and just entering his prime. And on July 14, 2004, they traded Shaq to the Miami Heat. Shaquille O'Neal and Kobe Bryant never got along, but the bickering never boiled over into a physical confrontation. In all likelihood, that's probably because deep down, Shaq respected Kobe's talent and considered him an asset. The same could not be said of Goran Dragic, which is probably why Shaq choked that man until he lost consciousness.
You almost choked out,
Gordon.
To understand the problem that led to this bizarre and incredibly dangerous incident, you first have to understand the 2008 Phoenix Suns and Shaq's role on the team. The Phoenix Suns had hired Mike D'Antoni to be their head coach just 21 games into the 2003 and 4 season. And D'Antoni couldn't turn things around immediately because injuries decimated the team's roster. However, the following offseason, the Suns went out and signed free agent point guard Steve Nash, and that changed everything. Utilizing Nash's pace and creativity at point guard and the athleticism of Amar'e Stoudemire and Shawn Marion at forward, D'Antoni implemented the up-tempo, freewheeling run-and-gun offense that was eventually dubbed 7 seconds or less, a reference to D'Antonio's philosophy of getting a shot off within the first 7 seconds of an offensive possession. The new system worked brilliantly. The 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns won 177 games over the next 3 seasons, claiming 3 consecutive division titles. Steve Nash won back-to-back MVP awards in 2005 and 2006, and Mike D'Antoni was named Coach of the Year in 2005. However, the Suns kept running into the same problem in the postseason: dominant big men. In 2005, D'Antoni's Suns were eliminated by Tim Duncan and the San Antonio Spurs, 4-1 in the Western Conference Finals. In 2006, they were eliminated by Dirk Nowitzki and the Dallas Mavericks, 4-2 in the Western Conference Finals. And in 2007, they were eliminated by Duncan and the Spurs again, this time 4-1 in the Western Conference Semifinals. At that point, the Suns brass decided that they needed a dominant big man if they were ever going to get past the Spurs and the Mavericks in the postseason. So midway through the following season, in February of 2008, the Suns traded Shawn Marion to the Miami Heat in exchange for one of the greatest big men of all time. The trade made sense in theory. Surely if anybody could stop Tim Duncan, it was 3-time NBA Finals MVP Shaquille O'Neal. Unfortunately, there was one huge problem. At 7'1" and 300 plus pounds, Shaq wasn't fast, at all. And he used to lumber down the court and set up in the post. And that's not D'Antoni's offense at all. They were supposed to sprint down the court and make things happen on the fly. So not surprisingly, Shaq had a hard time adjusting to the Suns' up-tempo style. And over the last 28 regular season games in 2008, the 2-time NBA scoring champion averaged just 12.9 points per game. A particular source of frustration for Big Diesel was a small forward/shooting guard named Goran Dragic, originally drafted by the Dallas Mavericks in 1999. The Croatian native spent time with the Grizzlies, Magic, Jazz, and Sixers before signing with the Suns in March of 2008. According to Hall of Famer Grant Hill, who had signed with the Suns as a free agent prior to the season, Dragic was a pretty good shooter. However, he didn't like to pass the ball inside, and obviously that frustrated Shaq. And it was like playing with Kobe all over again, except Dragic wasn't even half as good. But what made things worse was that Dragic would apparently talk trash to Shaq in practice. Kobe Bryant not passing the ball and talking trash was one thing, but Goran Dragic, a journeyman who'd averaged 9.6 points per game over 384 games, that was something the big Aristotle couldn't and wouldn't tolerate. According to Amar'e Stoudemire, Shaq warned Dragic on several occasions that he was gonna get him. Eventually, Shaq made good on that promise. It was April of 2008, and the Suns were once again playing the Spurs in the playoffs, and they had just lost Game 1 thanks to who else? Tim Duncan, who'd scored 40 points, including a game-tying three-pointer at the end of the first overtime.
Duncan, a three-pointer, puts it up, it's good! Tim Duncan from three-point land ties the game!
It was a demoralizing loss, and Shaq had been brought in to stop Duncan, but he couldn't do it. Duncan was too good. The next day, the Suns' dressing room was tense. Everybody had the sense that Mike D'Antoni's job was at stake. And the day after that, the day of Game 2, the Suns had a team meeting. Everybody was trying to be serious, except Dragic. Once again, he was inexplicably talking trash to Shaq, one of the greatest players in NBA history. According to Amar'e Stoudemire, the guy just wouldn't shut up. This time, Shaq had had enough, and he just snapped.
We had a guy, Gordon Gorchak, everybody's trying to be serious, but the guy just kept talking, so I told him, I said, Gordon, shut up.
About 30 minutes before the game, right before the Suns were about to head out to the court, Shaq crept up behind Goran Dragic, put the 6'7" Croatian in a WWE-style sleeper hold, and kept him there until he passed out. Then Shaq just gently laid him down on the floor.
Game starts in 25 minutes. The guy's about to die in the locker room.
Amazingly, Dragic went on to play 15 minutes against the Spurs that night. 15 minutes of professional basketball after he was choked unconscious by Shaq. Still, the craziest thing about this story is that we never heard about it at the time. Dragic quietly went back to Europe after the season and never played it in the NBA again. And none of the other guys on the team said a word. It wasn't until 2013, a full 5 years later, that the first account came out. Grant Hill told the story during a segment of TNT's Inside the NBA. He didn't say who got choked out, but Arizona Republic reporter Paul Coro managed to work out that it was Dragic. The story was then confirmed by both Shaq and Steve Nash during a TNT segment at the 2016 All-Star Game. Of course, everybody can joke about the incident now because it's way too late for the NBA to slap Shaq with a finer suspension. And more importantly, because we all know Dragic didn't in fact die in the locker room that night in 2008. However, it's not too hard to imagine how this whole story could have turned out very differently. Shaq's actually pretty damn lucky he's not wearing a giant orange jumpsuit right now.